there is significant funding by groups and organizations to push that, including Sharia, into the United States?
Oh, there's no doubt whatsoever. Prince Al-Walid bin Talal from Saudi Arabia, who has spent millions and millions of dollars in funding universities.
The goal is for the Western Hemisphere, for the Western civilization, the United States, and Texas as ground zero, to become Islamic.
They're working toward eliminating and destroying Western civilization from within, and all the non-Muslim apologists for Sharia that we see are indications of how successful that effort has been. This is all about political power. Nihad Awad, in repeated statements speaking about increasing the number of Muslim congressmen, getting Muslim senators, and increasing Muslim political power on that basis.
Ms. Shield, let me ask you a quick question, and just try to go through these pretty quickly, right? Just a few things with respect to Texas, my friend Mr. Gill was just talking about. Is it true that of Austin, including there's a big center in West Campus, the University of Texas, including other places? In other words, it's not just located just Epic City, is that correct?
That's correct.
So I'm also talked to a number of people, particularly in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, women in particular, who will tell me that there are enclaves and areas throughout the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex where they do not go, where there are women, Texans, who say that because they are in areas that have a high concentration of Muslim men, and because of the nature of what's going on in those areas, that there are now, quote, no-go zones in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And I've heard that from multiple people in multiple places throughout that area, correct?
Correct.
And Mr. Spencer, and I'd look to you on this question here. I heard my colleagues on the other side of the aisle who were raising objection to legislation that, and a number of bills that some of us introduced, particularly one that I introduced, that was raising the issue of vetting individuals as we're bringing them into the United States for their adherence to Sharia law. That was the idea. The idea is that Sharia law is inconsistent with our values in Western civilization, so we should know if we're bringing people into the country that may want to advance a system of law or systems that are contrary to our laws. Here's my question. In doing so, my colleagues acknowledged and said that that would mean that Muslims generally would be in fear of deportation or inability to be brought into the country. Does that not suggest that there's a recognition that Sharia law is central to most of the Muslim population throughout the world and those that come to the United States?
It would seem as if they're aware of that, yes.
And is that true? Is
yes.
Sharia law central to most Muslims throughout the world?
Absolutely. Sharia is considered divine law, and thus it takes precedence over all other legal systems. In areas of the Muslim world where it is not fully implemented, such as Egypt or Syria, other countries, it still has a tremendous cultural influence, such that elements of it are often enforced by individuals or groups where the government doesn't do so.
And is it not true also that there are some 50+ countries throughout the world in which Sharia is either entirely the law or central to the law in a mixture of its religious implementation, but also its civil?
Yes, that's right. There are 57 members of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, 56 nations, and the Palestinian Authority.
Is it also not true that when we're talking about the advance of the Islam population, or the population of Muslims that adhere to Islam in this country, that it is not also true that there is significant funding by groups and organizations to push that, including Sharia, into the United States?
Oh, there's no doubt whatsoever. You have, for example, Prince Al-Walid bin Talal from Saudi Arabia, who has spent millions and millions of dollars in funding universities such as Georgetown, where they have now the Prince Al-Walid Center for Muslim Christian Understanding that is designed essentially to whitewash Islam, jihad, and Sharia and present a version of these things that are designed to foster complacency. And also have the government of Qatar doing the same thing on an even larger.
In addition to these countries, in addition to foreign funding, there are organizations such as CARE and other organizations that are designed to implement and advance the existence of Sharia and the advance of Islamism in the United States. Is that true?
Oh, certainly. Omar Ahmed, the co-founder of CARE, has been on record saying the Quran should be the only law of the land. He has denied saying this, but the original reporter stuck by her story. Ibrahim Hooper of CARE, the famous spokesman for the organization, said that he wanted to see the government of the United States become Islamic sometime in the future. And this is something that is clear from all of CARE's actions.
And would it be safe to say that the goal of those organizations, and the Muslim Brotherhood, as my friend Mr. Gill said, also from Texas, that the goal of those organizations in advancing Islamist movement in the United States, that the goal is for the Western Hemisphere, for the Western civilization, the United States, and Texas as ground zero, to become Islamic?
Oh, there's no doubt about it. That's very clear from the explanatory memorandum of the Muslim Brotherhood, saying that the goal is that Allah's religion is victorious over other religions, and they're working toward eliminating and destroying Western civilization from within. And all the non-Muslim apologists for Sharia that we see are indications of how successful that effort has been.
One last question, I'm over my time, then I'll recognize the gentlelady from Wyoming. Is that not inherently political and not just missional? In other words, not just saying, hey, we would like people to know Allah and to know the teachings of Muhammad and Islam, as much as a Christian might want to advance the mission of Christ, but that it is political in ideology and in effect.
There's no doubt whatsoever. This is all about political power. Nihad Awad, the executive director of CARE, has made that quite clear in repeated statements speaking about increasing the number of Muslim congressmen, getting Muslim senators, and increasing Muslim political power on that basis.
There's a movement afoot across the United States that seeks to overthrow our legal system and the Constitution to replace it with a foreign legal system that upends our American way of life. It seeks to replace these foundational elements of our constitutional order with Islamic law, known as Sharia. The principles of Sharia are at odds with the Constitution and the laws of the United States. As Sharia fails to include due process, treats non-Muslims as second-class citizens, and prescribes barbaric punishments. All the while, polygamy, misguided corporal punishment for perceived violations of Islam, and acts of violence and terrorism on behalf of Sharia are permitted by its adherents. Sharia encourages violence, silences dissent, rejects religious freedom, and subjugates women and children. Let's be clear. This is not about having the freedom of worshiping a religion of one's choosing, such as Islam, but forcing a foreign legal code that is incompatible with our laws and legal system that provides unwanted consequences to the American people. It's everything we've fought against for more than 250 years. Thomas Jefferson recognized this problem at the beginning of the 19th century when he confronted Islamists in the Barbary Wars to keep trade lanes open and end Islamic religious slavery. When envoys and future presidents, John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, inquired by what right the Islamic Barbary states preyed upon American shipping, enslaving both crews and passengers, America's two foremost envoys were told by Tripoli's ambassador, quote, "It was written in the Quran that all nations who should, quote, not have acknowledged their authority were sinners, that it was their right and duty to make war upon whoever they could find, and to make slaves of all they could take as prisoners, and that every Muslim who should be slain in battle was sure to go to paradise," end quote. While the rest is history, with American Marines victorious on the shores of Tripoli as their anthem rings, the American people, this Congress, must recognize the same issue our founders identified and defeated over 200 years ago. Islamists are forcing their legal code onto non-believers by violence or the threat of it by any means necessary. The same problem of radical Islam enforcing Sharia has reared its head in the 21st century, this time using different tactics to advance it across the United States. Some of you might think of Sharia as a 2010s buzzword. That is wrong. Over the last few years, efforts to impose Sharia on American communities have taken off, and nowhere more than in my home state of Texas. In 2024, members of a Plano mosque sought to create their own 402-acre Islamic enclave governed by Sharia within the state of Texas. It was called the East Plano Islamic Center, or EPIC, and thankfully, after advocacy by many in Texas, the Texas state government has currently stymied it from advancing. EPIC's leader, Yasser Qadi, is a prominent imam with a long history of involving himself in Islamist causes, openly expressing hatred for Jews and support for Holocaust denial ideas. Despite claims Qadi renounced his earlier extremism and anti-Semitism, in October 2016, Qadi offered a defense of the Taliban. And following the October 7th attacks by the terrorist group Hamas, in which over 1,200 Israelis were murdered, Qadi declared he had, quote, the luxury of bluntly saying, "I am not going to condemn the fight of an oppressed people," end quote. However, EPIC is only one example of Sharia taking root in Texas. Shadow Islamic courts have also proliferated. One Dallas tribunal, for example, purports to make final judgments on legal disputes according to Islamic jurisprudence, placing Sharia law above binding state and federal law. Both epic cities and Islamic tribunals are repugnant to the spirit of the Constitution, which guarantees religious freedom and confirms that federal law is supreme. We see further evidence of a Sharia movement with imams making concerning claims. For example, in a recent video posted on X this month, a Texas imam said the following: "Mamdani is victory. We didn't succeed to conquer Vienna by the sword for 200 years, and now it's 10% Muslims. We need to enlarge the Muslim population in America." Sheikh Ustad, an imam from Epic Mosque in Texas, preaches regularly that jihad against the non-Muslims and martyrdom is the highest cause and reward in Islam, and he praises Hamas and other terror groups, espousing the following, quote, "My brothers and sisters, we are going to die anyway, so why don't we aim to die as a shaheed?" Shaheed is Arabic for witness, but used in Islamic context for martyrdom on behalf of Allah. All of this while the Muslim-observing population in Texas has grown. For example, in 2000, there were 115,000 Muslims in Texas. In 2020, the most recent data available, it's estimated 313,000, a 172% jump, and it's much greater 5 years later. One can make the claim that not all devotees agree or enforce with Sharia, but no one can deny the increase of Muslim observers in Texas, many of whom likely harbor support for Sharia's tenets. Moreover, Texas ranks third among U.S. states in the number of mosques, with 224 counted in 2020 and estimated over 300 today. Let's look at immigration numbers from those who immigrate from Muslim-majority countries, many of whom have settled in Texas. Since 2002, after the September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks, the United States has issued 4.6 million green cards, or lawful permanent status, to nationals from Muslim-majority nations, allowing them to remain here indefinitely. Some of these countries include Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Cameroon, Egypt, Indonesia, Iran, Iraq, Jordan, Lebanon, Libya, Malaysia, Mauritania, Oman, Pakistan, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Senegal, Sierra Leone, Somalia, and the list goes on and on. But put another way, there's been a 48% increase in green cards to these countries from 2002 to 2023 after 9/11. We must take a sobering look at our immigration policies to ensure we do not admit those who refuse to assimilate and try to establish their own legal code in contravention of our laws. All this is particularly true when one looks at Muslims in the United States' view of Sharia and in what capacity it should exist in our country. To give a nationwide perspective, a September 2024 survey discovered the following about United States Muslims. 50% favored Sharia blasphemy law, making it illegal to show a picture or a cartoon of Muhammad. 46% were in favor of to form a Muslim political party. 39% supported broad application of Sharia in the United States. 33% wanted Islam declared as our national religion. To better illustrate how pervasive this movement of radical Islam and Sharia is in Texas, according to data compiled by the Middle East Forum, of the 8,000 plus Islamic nonprofit organizations in the United States, almost 650 or 10% are based in Texas. One of the major Islamic networks that operate in Texas is the Cubids, which is tied to various Muslim Brotherhood branches and Hamas. How about the Council on American Islamic Relations influence in Texas, an Islamist organization that actively associates with other Islamists and Sharia-supporting groups like Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood? 3 months ago, Governor Abbott designated CAIR as a foreign terrorist and transnational criminal organization, and for good reason. The overtaking by Sharia isn't limited to Texas, it's the entire West. An Islamic cleric from New Jersey said of Muslims overtaking the electoral system, mayors, school boards, and local communities, quote, "Where is Mecca now? It's coming. Change is coming to America. And what is Allah saying? You are the best of nations. You're better than everybody else. Let's work toward that. Let's work toward a Muslim mayor." This should be a stark warning to all Americans in all 50 states. If Texas falls, so does the nation. These efforts to undermine the Constitution and demonstrate political Islam have only been worsened by an unchecked immigration system that admitted Sharia adherence into our borders. Europe gives us a clear example of what will happen if we don't close the door on Sharia now. In England and Wales, more than 85 Sharia courts operate as a parallel Islamic government, depriving women of the rights they are entitled to under British law. This year, the United Arab Emirates announced that it will end all support for Emirati students studying in the UK because of fears that students will be exposed to and join the Muslim Brotherhood, where the UAE has declared a terrorist organization, but the UK has not. As recent as last March, supporters of Sharia and other Islamists have signaled their desire to advance jihad to other nations. The Qatar-based International Union of Muslim Scholars, a global network of Muslim scholars, called for, quote, "armed jihad against our friend and ally Israel." You might think the Sharia crisis is only in foreign countries or has not yet arrived in the United States, but it is here. Now is the time to protect every American's right to freely practice their own faith and defend the supremacy of other shared political system. Now is the time to take decisive action, as our founders did when confronted with the same issues today.